Our protagonist was the sole reader of an incredibly long serialized web novel titled Three Ways to Survive the Apocalypse. Despite the story being an absolute masterpiece in his eyes, it was a completely forgotten work that no one else seemed to care about. To put its obscurity into perspective, the novel spanned a staggering total of 3,149 episodes, yet it managed to pull in a tragic average view count of just 1.9 and a measly average comment count of 1.08 per chapter. Naturally, nobody in their right mind would commit to a web novel with over 3,000 episodes, but our protagonist was different. Sitting on his daily subway commute, he stared down at his phone, realizing that it had taken him 10 long years of dedication just to reach the final, unread episode 3,149. At the time, as he sat squeezed between ordinary passengers, he had absolutely no idea what his loyalty to the story would cost him. He had no inkling of the horrific, apocalyptic world that was about to bleed into his reality. A brutal world teeming with gigantic, bloodthirsty, subterranean monsters devouring screaming victims. Massive draconic beasts letting out earth shattering howls, and imposing white coated heroes standing armed with swords against towering, mutated bears. The transition from fiction to reality happened in a flash. On the exact day he finished reading the final chapter of the web novel, a violent reality check struck. Suddenly, a deafening screech echoed through the underground tracks, followed by a chaotic whoosh as the subway train forcefully ground to an unexpected halt. As the lights flickered and panic gripped the cabin, a massive horned entity loomed ominously over the train car. Looking around at the terrified faces of his fellow passengers, the protagonist could only stare in shock as the chilling truth settled in. The apocalypse from his favorite novel had just become reality. The world outside shattered completely as the ruined city burned, viewed from a high precipice above the glowing, fractured cityscape. Amidst the floating embers, swords clashed with a resounding metallic ring, sending sparks flying through the darkness. The force of the confrontation triggered a massive, explosive impact, tearing the ground apart in a swirling vortex of dust, electricity, and shattered stone. Locked in a desperate struggle, the warrior strained against a massive weight, bracing with his weapon as the pressure threatened to crush him. His sharp, intense gaze narrowed, focused entirely on the enemy before him. In a chaotic blur of motion, the two combatants flew past each other, their blades crossing mid-air with a powerful strike. Standing amidst the debris, his expression hardened with determination. As the ash settled around him, the black-haired survivor prepared for whatever horror would come next. In the face of absolute devastation, a faint, confident smile broke across his face, realizing his own role in this unfolding apocalypse. Staring at his phone screen, he can hardly believe he has finally reached the final episode of the web novel he's followed for so long, feeling far too nervous to even open it. He anxiously focuses on his screen, his heart racing with anticipation as he contemplates the ending. With a soft tap of his finger, he finally opens the long-awaited conclusion. In doing so, his life completely changes as he becomes the only person who knows exactly how the world is going to end. Suddenly thrust into this new reality, he stands with a group of survivors looking out over a vast, shimmering horizon under a rising sun, ready to face the apocalypse. The final words of the epilogue glowed against the stark white page. There are three ways to survive the apocalypse. Everything is fading and becoming unclear now. But one thing is certain, if you're reading this, you will survive. Below the signature of the author, TLS 123, the chapter count read 27 over 27. It was over. Huh. A sudden pop-up notification interrupted his thoughts, flashing a bold reminder right over the text. Notice, this is the last episode. He frantically swiped his thumb across the screen, his mind rejecting the abrupt conclusion. Really? Is that it? He stared blankly at the words, "the end," blown up on his screen, unable to accept that a long journey had ended with such a cryptic line. The rhythmic, heavy rumble of the subway car vibrated through the floorboards. Surrounded by regular commuters wrapped up in their own worlds, he sat quietly in his business suit, staring down at the device in his hands. He lowered his phone slightly, his dark eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and lingering emptiness. The story that had kept him company was gone, leaving only the mechanical swaying of the train car around him. Episode 1. Prologue. 3 ways to survive the apocalypse. I'm Dokja. That is how he always introduced himself to others. In Korean, the word Dokja can mean several things: an only child, a dedicated reader, or a staunch individualist. Because of this linguistic overlap, 9 times out of 10, people misunderstood his meaning completely. "Oh, so you're an only child?" a colleague would inevitably ask during an awkward icebreaker. "Well, yes, but that's not what I meant," he would reply patiently. "Oh, then what did you mean?" Holding up his company identification card, he would reveal the bold letters spelling out his actual identity: Employee Dokya Kim. "It's my name, Dokya Kim." His father had given him that name because he wanted his son to grow up to be a strong and independent person. But as he grew older, he couldn't help but feel that his name carried a quiet curse. True to the definition of a solitary individualist, he had been entirely lonely and single his whole life. Rubbing the back of his neck as his coworker offered a sympathetic look, he accepted his reality. This was who he was in a nutshell. Dokja, the solitary reader, completely unaware of what was about to happen next. Dokja Kim, 28 years old. He graduated from a third-rate college and is currently employed as a contractor at a subsidiary of a large corporation. His solitary hobby is reading serialized web novels on his phone during his subway commute on his way home from work. However, today's subway ride is unlike any other he has experienced before. "Oh my, at this rate, you might get sucked into your phone," a voice speaks out, startling him. He looks up in absolute shock to see Sangha Yu from the HR department standing right in front of him. "Hello," he stammers nervously. Standing over him in the crowded train car, she asks, "Are you heading home?" To which he awkwardly replies, "Yes, you too." Sangha smiles and shifts her bag, explaining, "Yes, I got lucky. My team manager is away on a business trip," causing Dokja to flinch slightly in surprise at the unexpected encounter. As she settles in next to him, a pleasant scent wafts over. Dokya's mind races in disbelief that he just ran into Sangha, the most popular girl at work, quietly noting to himself that her shampoo smells really nice. Looking at her, he asks, "Do you usually take the subway home?" Privately thinking to himself that from the HR assistant manager to the finance team manager, there must be a literal line of men waiting for a chance to drive a girl like her home. Ha! Actually, someone stole my bicycle, Sangha sighs, looking down at her lap. Daksha looks at her with wide eyes, asking, "You commute to work on a bike?" Sangha explains that because she has been working a lot of overtime lately, she thought she could use the exercise, adding that she also has some personal reasons for the routine. Seeing her up close, Dakya realizes exactly why all the men at work are head over heels for her. However, he quickly reminds himself that none of it concerns him, knowing that they live completely different lives. Suddenly, Sangha speaks a phrase aloud from her phone, "Prestarme dinero?" causing a bewildered Dokya to ask, Pardon? She cheerfully explains it as Spanish for, please lend me some money, leaving Dokya to marvel that she is a completely different breed altogether for studying on a crowded subway commute. Complimenting her dedication, Doksha tells her she is studying hard. This prompts a curious Sangha to lean over closer, enthusiastically asking him what he is reading. Caught off guard, Dokja awkwardly laughs and pulls his phone away to keep it out of view. Her eyes still manage to catch his screen, which displays World After the Apocalypse, Chapter 1. When she asks if it is a novel, a sweating Dokja plays it off, joking that you could just say he is studying Korean. This instantly sparks Sanga's excitement as she declares her absolute love for novels. She proudly lists her favorite mainstream literary authors, Murakami Haruki, Raymond Carver, and Han Kang. When she turns the question back on him and asks who his favorite author is, Dokja can only smile sheepishly, realizing internally that she wouldn't have any idea who it is even if he told her. Dokya reflects on the reality of his solitary hobby, confirming that his absolute escape is reading serialized web novels on the subway on his way home from work. The specific web novel he is completely consumed by is titled 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse, or TWSA for short, written by an author named TLS123. He has been reading this massive story for the past 10 years, and today it is finally coming to an end. People might wonder why he is making such a fuss over the ending of a web novel, but this story in particular is very special to him. Looking down at his screen, the text logs show a tragic reality for the author. Recent chapters from episode 3125 all the way down to 3119 show a count of exactly 1 view and 1 comment, belonging solely to Dokja. He has been faithfully reading this series since he was just an 8th grader. He relied on it as his primary comfort and lifeline during the painful years when he was severely bullied at school. Dokja sinks deeper into his thoughts as he reflects on his past, remembering the stinging disappointment when he failed his entrance exams and ended up at a third-rate college. His string of bad luck didn't end there. It followed him into his military service, where a stroke of misfortune got him stationed on the treacherous front line. Even now, his reality hasn't improved much as he finds himself trapped as an unstable contract worker, constantly getting transferred from one company to another. Looking down at his phone, a bead of sweat rolls down his face as he bitterly realizes that he doesn't possess a single happy memory. He wonders what the point of it all even is. Yet, looking at his screen brings a bittersweet feeling. The fictitious world he has been following for so many years is finally coming to an end, because today is the day the epilogue of TWSA will be uploaded. Sitting on the crowded subway train, surrounded by faceless, silhouetted commuters, Dokja tracks the numbers in his head. The massive story spanned a staggering 3,149 episodes. It was a 10-year-long epic journey that began in his late teens and finally ended in his adulthood. It still feels completely unbelievable to him that a series could go on for that long with just an average view count of 1. The text logs on his screen paint a lonely picture of the novel's history. The very first chapter had a decent start with around 1,200 views, but by chapter 10, the audience plummeted to only about 20 views. The view count dropped even further to a mere 12 by chapter 50. For the vast majority of the run, Dokja was the only one left reading. It truly felt like a story written for him and only him. He remembers wanting to support the struggling author with a monetary donation, but because it was hard enough for him to even make ends meet, he had to settle for a simple comment. His finger hovers over his logged message from 6:50 p.m. under his username, Dokja Kim. Sir, thank you for everything. I'll be looking forward to the epilogue. He had even tried recommending the series to others online in the past, but the internet community just criticized him. People were incredibly cruel, either claiming he was secretly the author trying to self-promote or calling him an attention seeker. He had simply tried to tell them it was a great series if they could just bear through it. Suddenly, a voice breaks through his deep contemplation, calling out, "Dokja!" Startled, he looks up to find Sangha staring right at him. He completely forgot she was sitting right next to him this entire time. Panicking internally, he realizes he needs to change the topic immediately to keep her from prying into his web novel. Sangha happily steers the conversation toward their shared workplace, noting that it has already been an entire year since they started working at the company. She reminisces about how they started around this exact time last year, marveling at how fast time flies. Dokja forces an enthusiastic laugh, agreeing that they really had no idea what they were getting into back then. Sangha laughs along with him, her bright expression matching his fake cheer as he remarks that it seems like it was only yesterday. However, a shadow of reality creeps back into his mind as he speaks his next words aloud. He can't believe their employment contracts are already ending soon.
Dokja abruptly catches himself, a sheepish "oh" escaping his lips as his memory finally catches up. He had completely forgotten. Sangha had already been promoted to a full-time employee just last month, a well-deserved reward for her unyielding diligence. He awkwardly rubs the back of his neck, forcing out a belated, nervous laugh. "Ah, that's right. Sorry for the late congratulations. Haha, I guess I should have learned a foreign language too." Sangha, ever polite and modest, quickly tries to wave off his self-deprecation. "No, it's fine, Dokja. I haven't completed my performance assessment yet," and despite her humble reassurance, Dokja knows the harsh reality of their situation. He watches her earnest expression and admits to himself that the outcome was entirely obvious. He hadn't put in the extra effort, whereas Sangha had given her job absolutely everything she had. It was only natural that she secured a permanent position while he was left behind. The brief silence between them is broken when Sangha looks down, a nervous bead of sweat on her cheek. Dokja," she begins hesitantly. "Yes," he replies, meeting her gaze. "If you want, I could tell you the name of the app one use." She offers gently, wanting to help him with his own studies. Dokja stares at her, his eyes widening slightly as her kind words hang in the air. A sudden, strange thought crosses his mind. If I were in a different genre. His gaze drifts away from her, wandering across the train until it lands on a large brown grasshopper enclosed in a clear plastic terrarium, held carefully by a young boy sitting across from them. He muses on his own pathetic, ordinary reality. If the genre of my life wasn't nonfiction, but fantasy, would I have been the protagonist? Before he can dwell any deeper on his whimsical thoughts, a sudden, violent jolt rocks the subway car. The overhead handles swing wildly, the metal rattling sharply above the passengers' heads as the train aggressively lurches. "Dokja," Sangha calls out, her voice bringing him right back to reality as she notices his distant look. "It's okay, Sangha," he replies smoothly, cutting off her trailing thoughts. "Huh," she mutters, slightly caught off guard. Dokja looks away slightly, realizing that finding out about a new language learning tool wouldn't change his underlying circumstances. He acknowledges the cold truth of his situation. It wouldn't matter if you told me the name of the app or not. He accepts that he cannot escape reality. It's that the genre of my life is nonfiction. He looks down at the other commuters around him as the subway continues down the tracks. Asterisk, and in this genre, I'm no protagonist. I'm merely a reader. Asterisk addressing Sangha once more, he adds with a calm smile. I have to live my own life. Sangha stares back at him, shifting slightly in her seat as his words echo in her mind. Your own life, she repeats softly. A sudden look of deep admiration washes over her face. You're so inspiring, Dokja, she says earnestly. Sorry, Dokja responds, blinking in confusion at her unexpected reaction. Before he can clarify, Senga pumps her fist into the air with sudden determination. "I should also live my own life," she proclaims loudly, catching him completely by surprise. "Huh," he reacts, a look of sheer bewilderment crossing his face. "Like you, I'll strive to live my life to the fullest," she vows passionately, completely fired up as she tells herself, "Let's do this." Dokja just sweats nervously, forcing a polite smile while thinking to himself, well, at least that got her to stop talking. Suddenly, a sharp BZSD cuts through the air as the phone tightly gripped in his hand begins to vibrate intensely. "A message," Dokja mutters aloud, looking down to look at the screen. As his eyes lock onto the glowing display, a heavy feeling of foreshadowing hits him. Back then, I had no idea. A notification window suddenly pops open right on his screen. It is a direct message from a user named TLS123, simply reading, "Thank you." Dokja stares blankly at the sender's username. TLS123, he whispers under his breath. His eyes widen in absolute shock as the realization hits him like a tidal wave. Huh? Is this the author of TWSA? He freezes entirely, completely unaware of the reality-altering consequences heading his way. What would happen to me next? "Are you the author of TWSA? Dokja quickly texts back, his fingers moving fast across the screen. Another message immediately pops up on his phone from TLS123. "Thanks to you, I was able to finish my story. I also won a prize in a contest." An exclamation point appears as Dokja reads the text in surprise. Dokja holds his phone up to his face, looking stunned. What? TWSA was in a contest? He thinks to himself, sweating slightly. It really is him. Dokja replies with genuine excitement. "Congratulations. But what kind of contest?" TLS123 messages back. "It's not a big contest, so you wouldn't have heard of it." Followed quickly by another text. And the series will become paid content soon." The author continues explaining the sudden shift in the next messages, starting with the epilogue today. TSA will become paid content. Then, TLS123 makes an unexpected offer. "As a token of my gratitude, I would like to send you a special present. Could you tell me your email address?" A dark, ominous shadow of a massive creature with white fur and glowing golden horns looms over everything. The text forebodingly reads, "What was about to happen to this world?" Dokja stares down at his phone in contemplation. He types back, "A present." TLS123 responds warmly. "After all, I was able to publish my story thanks to you." Dokja raises his phone higher, thinking about the author's vague responses. Wow. TWSA won a contest? He perspires a little, analyzing the interaction. An unknown contest? I guess he doesn't want to tell me because he's embarrassed. Sitting right next to Senga on the subway car, Dokja's phone lets out a sharp bzzzt. A black notification bar appears on the screen reading, "You have one new message." He perks up, thinking to himself with a small flower blooming over his head. A present? Is it a gift card? It would be great if it's a $50 gift card. His eyes go wide as he opens the email notification. It came. The present. The screen displays an email under the header, "Thank you for everything," from the sender TLS123-123@naver.com, sent at 6:55 p.m. The message reads, "Mr. Dokja Kim, starting at 7 p.m. today, TWSA will become paid content. This will help you. I wish you all the best." Dokja immediately catches the timing, looking down at his screen anxiously. Starting at 7 p.m.? It's 6:55 right now, so that means I have 5 minutes left. Hoping to catch a few more details before the deadline hits, Dokja looks at his phone. "I'll go into my favorites," and suddenly he freezes. The screen flashes a harsh restriction sign with the text, "No results were found." Dokja stares at the blank search page in disbelief, his mind racing to find an explanation. That's weird. Do they remove serials without prior notice when they become paid content? A sudden, Sharp click echoes through the subway car as the overhead lights abruptly cut out, plunging the entire vehicle into a dim, eerie blue twilight. Both Dakja and Senga stare blankly at their screens, momentarily distracted by the sudden power drop. What? Senga mutters, looking up from her phone in confusion as Dakja glances around the darkening cabin. Before anyone can process the blackout, a violent crash tears through the train. The sound of metal grinding against metal shrieks through the tunnel as sparks fly frantically outside the windows. The subway car violently jolts, throwing passengers off balance. A voice screams amidst a deafening creak, and Senga instinctively buries her head in her arms to shield herself. What's happening? Another commuter panics. The violent shaking intensifies into a brutal screech as the brakes slam against the tracks. Is it a terrorist attack? Someone shrieks in terror through the smoke and chaos as passengers are tossed around, screaming in absolute horror. Amidst the blinding haze and darkness, a chilling presence manifests. A massive, terrifying grin filled with rows of sharp, pearly white teeth pulls back, exhaling a heavy mist into the air as it lets out a ragged, echoing asterisk pant. Pant, asterisk. Outside, the entire subway train grinds to a forced, agonizing halt inside the pitch-black tunnel, sparks raining down as a loud hiss of escaping steam ripples through the dark. Inside the chaotic car, Dakja pushes through the thick haze to check on his coworker. Senga, are you okay? He asks urgently, his face dripping with sweat. Why yes. She trembles, looking around at the fallen passengers crying out in agony. What do you think is happening? Dakja tries to maintain his composure, looking her in the eyes to calm her down. Don't worry. It's probably nothing. Right at that moment, a digital display blinks. With a definitive click, the time flips perfectly from 6:59 p.m. to 7 p.m. Dakja freezes entirely, his eyes widening in sheer realization as a chilling thought strikes him to his very core. Asterisk, it was by sheer coincidence that I checked the time at that exact moment. It's 7 p.m., so the paid content, asterisk. Suddenly, the train's intercom system cuts through the panic with a piercing, repetitive beep-beep. A frantic, automated broadcast blares overhead, overriding the screams of the commuters. Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. Please, evacuate. Evacuate. Passengers scramble in total hysteria, completely unaware of the nightmare that has just officially begun. Senga grips Dakja's arm tightly, her eyes wide with fear as she asks, Dakja, what's going on? Dakja stares ahead in stunned shock, his own heartbeat loudly thumping in his ears with a heavy du-du-du-du-du. Suddenly, a blinding burst of energy erupts through the cabin. A massive flash of white-hot lightning forks across the ceiling, causing the surrounding passengers to flinch violently away from the center of the car. A sharp, static electricity sound goes crackle right in front of Dakja's eyes. He raises his hand to shield his face, sweating as the air itself begins to warp around them. The terrifying reality manifests as ominous, system-like text boxes materialize out of the sparks. The upper announcement reads, the free service of the 8612th planetary system has come to an end. The frightened passengers cower and stare in absolute disbelief as the lower notification seals their fate. The main scenario will begin now. As the realization settles over him, a grim finality appears on the screen. The text delivers a chilling truth. It was at that moment that the genre of my life changed. Dakja stares blankly as a cold sweat drips down his face, completely bewildered by the sudden thought. He couldn't understand why that specific sentence had suddenly popped into his head at a time like this. Before he can process it, the subway car violently grinds to a complete halt, plunging the entire cabin into total darkness. Anxious murmurs instantly ripple through the crowded car. Stranded in the dim, blue-tinted dark, passengers try to reassure themselves, thinking that subways stop all the time and that this is just a normal delay. But for Dakja, the opening lines of a very familiar story refuse to stop crossing his mind. Amidst the shifting crowd, Senga's voice breaks the silence, trembling with uncertainty as she mutters, "A Dakibi?" Dakja snaps his head toward her in surprise. Hearing her words, a nearby passenger turns around with a confused frown, asking, "Sorry?" Dokja's eyes widen in sheer shock as horror sets in. Realistically speaking, there was absolutely no way this could be true. It was completely impossible, but the details fitting together are undeniable. He looks down at his phone screen, where the words of the web novel text glare back at him, describing a creature with two small horns, a downy, floating being too peculiar to be a fairy, too malicious to be an angel, and too innocent-looking to be a devil. Suddenly, someone at the far end of the cabin gasps, "Look!" Deep inside the darkened car, a strange, bright orb of violet and white energy begins to manifest, hovering ominously right in front of the train doors. The cabin erupts into panicked whispers as everyone stares at the glowing anomaly, wondering what on earth it could be. Dokja can only watch in absolute terror, his breath hitching as the realization hits him full force. In no way. This is. Dokja stares wide-eyed, his gaze locked onto the strange phenomenon taking place right inside the train car. The glowing violet and white energy crackles, condensing until the orb pops, revealing a floating, fluffy white creature wrapped in a ragged dark cloth with two small horns on its head. The entity hovers eerily in midair. The entire train carriage falls into an uneasy silence as everyone freezes, staring at the bizarre being. At that exact moment, reality and fiction overlap perfectly in Dokja's mind. There is no doubt about it. The creature before them is a Dakibi. It is the exact same harbinger of tragedy from the opening chapters of 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse, a story that dragged on for thousands of chapters. Dokja tightly squeezes his phone, his mind racing with disbelief. Asterisk impossible. How can this be? That very same Dakibi was now right in front of me. Asterisk. Breaking the tense quiet, the creature begins to emit strange noises, sniffing the air before letting out a loud, garbled exclamation. The strange gibberish instantly breaks the crowd's paralysis, and the carriage erupts into confused murmurs. "What's that thing saying?" a student asks her friends, while a nearby businessman holds up his phone to record it, smiling as he says, "Is this augmented reality or something?" Another voice sneers, "Ew, it's so ugly." No one in the car has any idea what is actually happening, except for Dokja. Standing beside him, Senga looks over anxiously. "I think it's speaking Spanish," she whispers, her voice trembling slightly. "Should I try talking to it?" Dokja quickly turns to her, his expression frantic as he cuts her off. "You don't even know what that thing is," he says urgently, trying to make her realize the gravity of the situation. "Are you going to ask it to lend you money? Pueda, or whatever it is won't help us right now." Senga shrinks back slightly, murmuring, "Well, no?" But before they can say anything more, a sharp, clear voice cuts through the ambient noise of the train car. "Testing, testing. Can everyone hear me?" The words appear in a dark speech bubble as the floating creature grins, its mouth stretching wide to reveal rows of sharp teeth. It rubs its face in frustration. Gosh, the language patch was malfunctioning for a bit. It opens its arms wide, hovering aggressively as its voice echoes with authority. "Can everyone hear me now?" Instantly, a passenger steps forward, frowning aggressively at the small creature. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" "Pardon?" the Dakibi mutters, turning its small body around to face the passenger. The young man crosses his arms confidently, completely unbothered by the creature's strange appearance. "Are you filming a movie?" "I have to go to my audition." The Dakibi tilts its head, letting out a small chuckle. "Oh, an audition at this hour, huh? Haha. I guess I should have done more research." Its voice shifts into a more sinister tone as it hovers higher. "They told me I would have the most customers if we put up the paywall at around 7 p.m. The passenger blinks in absolute confusion. "What? What on earth are you talking about?" "Okay, everyone, please calm down." The Dakibi chirps cheerfully, raising a small white arm to address the growing crowd. "Why don't you take a seat and listen? I have something very important to tell you all." But the crowd is rapidly losing its patience. "What is it? Just start the train already," an older man in a vest shouts angrily. The unrest spreads instantly through the car. "You can't do this without our consent," another commuter demands, while a third voice rings out. "How are you going to compensate for this?" Amidst the shouting, a young girl points up at the floating entity. "Mommy, what is that?" Is it a cartoon? Watching the chaos unfold, Dokja's thoughts turn cold. I am certain. As the passengers continue to scream and pump their fists in the air, a chilling realization washes over Dokja. I know exactly how this story goes. He knows exactly what happens next to people who talk back to a Dakibi. I have to stop them, he realizes frantically. But how? Knowing he can't save everyone, he quickly turns to the person closest to him. He reaches out, gripping her shoulder firmly. Senga, don't move. Senga looks back at him, startled and sweating. Sorry. Ha. The Dakibi giggles softly, hovering silently above the heads of the crowded passengers. The air in the carriage suddenly grows incredibly heavy. It sure is noisy here, isn't it? The audition-bound passenger scowls, opening his mouth to speak. I told you. The Dakibi's cute demeanor instantly vanishes. Its eye flashes a brilliant, blood-red color, veins bulging across its skin as its face twists into a terrifying expression. To be quiet. A sharp, violent crack echoes through the train car. Huh, the young man mutters. He doesn't even have time to register what has happened before a sudden explosion of dark blood erupts directly from the top of his head, spraying into the air right in front of the horrified onlookers. Asterisk splat. Splat. Asterisk. A few quiet groans escape the surrounding crowd. The young man's lifeless body begins to sway, blood dripping heavily down his legs and onto his boots, staining the subway floor in a grim preview of the tragedy yet to come. A massive geyser of blood erupts into the air, showering the nearby passengers. The older man in the vest and the woman in the red suit freeze in absolute horror, their faces pale as the realization of what they just witnessed sets in. Panic instantly ripples through the crowded subway car as people scramble away from the center of the carnage. The Dakibi's face splits into a terrifyingly wide grin, exposing rows of sharp, gleaming teeth dripping with malice. We're not filming a movie, it declares flatly. Before anyone can even process the words, a brutal wave of executions begins. Splatter. More heads begin to detonate like popped balloons. The interior of the car turns into a claustrophobic nightmare of flying blood and severed tissue. Commuters scream in agony, clutching their ears and covering their faces as their fellow passengers drop dead one by one. The relentless asterisk splat. Splat. Asterisk of tearing flesh echoes over the sounds of sobbing and desperate prayers. The creature's massive, slit-pupil red eye glares down at the trembling survivors, filled with sadistic glee. Or a novel. Its voice booms, cutting through the chaos. And it certainly isn't the reality that you are all familiar with. Do you understand? Dokja stands frozen alongside Senga, his heart hammering against his ribs as he takes in the impossible scene. I hated to admit it, but this was real. My doubt and disbelief slowly faded away. He looks down at his boots, watching the dark, thick fluid rush past his feet. As I watch the floor quickly become painted in blood. The Dakibi hovers effortlessly in the center of the carriage, surrounded by a faint, shimmering aura. It looks down at the terrified, weeping survivors with utter contempt. All of you have had quite a cushy life until now, haven't you? It jeers, throwing its arms out wide and laughing maniacally. You were able to breathe, eat, excrete, and reproduce without paying the costs. You've all been enjoying privileged lives. But it's all over now, the Dakibi adds, its massive white-furred face twisting into an unsettling grin as its eyes flare with a blinding light. Nothing is free in life, isn't that right? The realization hits the survivors like a physical blow. Terrified passengers squeeze together, trembling in the dimly lit train car as the oppressive atmosphere thickens. Suddenly, a voice breaks through the whimpering. Is it money you want? A man asks, standing up to confront the creature. The speaker is a sharp-featured man wearing glasses and a pinstripe suit, his expression a mix of anger and desperate bravado as he stares down the floating entity. Doctor recognizes him immediately. Turning slightly to his colleague, he asks, Senga, isn't that Mr. Han from the finance team? He was employed because of his connections, Dokja notes internally, as Senga wide-eyedly confirms, yes. Stepping forward boldly, Mr. Han reaches into his pocket. If it's money you're after, I'll give you as much as you want. And just so you know, this is what I do. How much do you need? $1 million? Or $2 million perhaps? The Dakibi hovers silently, watching him with an inscrutable expression. So you're offering me your money? Its voice echoes. Believing he has found a loophole, Mr. Han rummages through his belongings with a desperate, frantic grin. I'll give you as much as you want if you let me out of here. Yes, money solves everything. Mr. Han laughs hysterically, proudly holding up a fan of high-value bank drafts. The Dakibi's tone turns cold and clinical. Money is good. It is an object that signifies an intersubjective agreement between humans. Snap! With a sudden, violent motion from the creature, a burst of bright flames abruptly erupts right in Mr. Han's hands. Huh! He gasps in shock as the paper money disintegrates into ash. But it's only valid within the confines of your space-time, the Dakibi declares mockingly. The powerful flames continue to lick at Mr. Han's hands, forcing him to his knees as his briefcase drops to the floor. He groans in pain. Ugh. That paper has no value in the macroscopic dimension, the Dakibi warns coldly, looking down at the broken man. This is a warning. If you ever pull a stunt like this again, I'll blow your head up. The creature lets out a low sigh, looking completely bored by the display. There's no time for chit-chat. It murmurs, floating effortlessly. Your debt is piling up as we speak. I won't bother explaining it to you. It will be faster for you to try to earn the money yourselves. With an ominous snap, a sharp spike of energy erupts into the car. A sudden swoosh echoes through the confined space as the creature's horns begin to glow intensely. The terrified passengers look up in absolute shock as a Stark system notice materializes in the air. Channel #BI 7623 has opened. The air pressure drops, thick with a strange, crackling static electricity. The survivors look around in utter bewilderment as blood spatters nearby, and another chilling message flashes before their eyes. The constellations are now making an entrance. A chorus of high-pitched electronic ding-ding-ding sounds ring out simultaneously throughout the carriage. Luminous, blue holographic screens begin popping up right in front of the passengers, leaving them stammering in confusion. What is this? Everyone responds differently to the sudden phenomenon. Some passengers stare blankly at the floating panels with mounting anxiety, while another man lets out a dark, knowing smirk, completely unfazed by the madness unfolding around them. The system screens continue to synchronize with an overlapping ding, casting a pale blue light over the frozen passengers as they try to comprehend the digital interfaces hovering directly in their fields of view. The reality of the situation sets in as the screen's layout shifts. A frantic alert panel blinking with an envelope icon forces itself to the center of attention, boldly announcing, the main scenario has arrived. The full weight of their new reality is laid bare on the holographic interface, revealing the brutal conditions of their survival. Main scenario number 1. Prove your value. Goal, kill one or more living organisms. Category, main. Difficulty, F. Time limit, 30 minutes. Reward, 300 coins. Penalty for failure, death. The floating Dakibi clasps its small hands together with a sickeningly cheerful disposition. Looking down at the sweating, terrified commuters, it offers a mockingly sweet send-off. Well, good luck, everyone. The creature's small, fuzzy face immediately stretches into a monstrous, wide-mouthed grin, its eye flaring with a malicious, blinding pink light. I expect to see an interesting story, it growls, its voice dripping with sadistic anticipation. Before anyone can even process the horrific penalty of the task, a blinding explosion of white and pink energy erupts right in the middle of the carriage. Flash. The brilliant, violent light shatters the darkness of the train car, forcing the survivors to shield their eyes in sheer terror. The holographic blue scenario screens hover ominously around them, casting a ghostly glow on their pale, panicked faces as the 30-minute countdown to execution begins.